Jai Jagannath, we are here for another meeting in English language, and today we are going to talk about Bhagavad Gita. As usual, during our very informal and very friendly conversations, you are welcome to stop me at any time for questions or clarifications or whatever. So we start the Bhagavad Gita. Many people, even among Hindus, have some vague concept on Bhagavad Gita. I find during my social media interactions and even on Quora questions, that lots of people have very weird ideas of what Bhagavad Gita says. In fact, many people are misquoting Gita and saying stuff that doesn't exist. They say, oh, Bhagavad Gita says blah blah blah, and they said nothing like that. And unfortunately, some of these people get angry when I ask them to actually quote the original verse, because the misquote is exposed, so they usually get angry. But we need to actually read the Gita, and the best thing is to read the original text together with the translation. Translation is any translation, any good one is okay. We'll try to find one that has the original Devanagari and transliteration, possibly, and dictionary meanings. And the commentary should be non-sectarian and as faithful as possible to the original verse, even if, of course, in the Shastra usually have different layers of meanings. So many verses can be interpreted in different ways. The important thing is that such interpretations must always be in accordance to each other, compatible to each other, and especially compatible with the fundamental principles of Dharma and Vidya. So we cannot make a translation that is not in accordance to the original meaning and to the foundation of the spiritual science. So we mentioned here in the preface to my translation and commentary to Bhagavad Gita that this text is the first and foremost of the Prasanatraya. The other two are the Upanishads and the Vedanta Sutra or Brahma Sutra. So Bhagavad Gita is very short and very clear. It's the easiest text. We have in this edition, we have one volume, which is the layout is a little packed. And then we have the version in 18 volumes, that each chapter has a volume, so it's easier to read maybe and to carry around. So the introduction, the first chapter is Arjuna Vishada Yoga, the yoga of Arjuna's grief, Arjuna's worries, Arjuna's suffering. So we have each of the 18 chapters bear the title of yoga. This is already something very important, because many people are confused about the meaning of yoga, the meaning and the purpose of yoga. So in the last 150 years, we have seen the development of what is imaginatively called Vinyasa Yoga, which is the physical yoga, gymnastics yoga. Many people in India think that this is a Western approach, but that is not the case. This is a very Indian approach that was started by the famous Iyengar. Iyengar was very much Indian, and he started this idea of the yoga as a physical exercise. And in fact, most Western teachers of yoga have graduated from Iyengar yoga institutes that have been opened around the world. And presently, Baba Ramdev is not doing much different. But then we understand that all these chapters of Bhagavad Gita speak about yoga. And it's not physical yoga. There is not even one chapter that is called asana yoga or pranayama yoga. It's as Patanjali clearly declared, stated in his the first, the first pada, samadhi pada of his Yoga Sutras. Yoga is the calming down of the movements of the mind. So this has absolutely nothing to do with physical fitness. In fact, excessive attention on physical fitness is opposite to the purpose of yoga, because the purpose of yoga is to overcome the material identification with the physical body and even to the mind. So physical fitness and even relaxation are definitely not the purpose of yoga. We will see. If you are interested, we can also go and check. I have collected some of the pictures of famous great yogis who don't look fit, physically fit at all, like Totapuri or Trailanga Swami, or these are extremely famous yogis, and others as well. But in any case, we see the chapter 1, the Arjuna Vishada Yoga, is the first step in self-realization. Why? In some translations, the title of the chapter has been modified. In ISKCON's Bhagavad Gita, for example, the title of the first chapter is Observing the Armies on the Battlefield, which is not a yoga. Why Arjuna's grief is yoga? Because the word yoga, the definition yoga, literally means connection. It's the same meaning of the Latin word religio, that comes from religare, which means to connect. So yoga is the connection. We connect the Atman with the Brahman. We connect the lower self with the supreme, with the higher self. We connect the senses with the mind, and the mind to the Atman. We connect so many things, so many meanings of the yoga. And the deepest meaning of yoga is to connect everything to God. God is not what Abrahamic religions believe. Actually, whatever transcendental aspect we find in theology, in the Abrahamic sects, has been added in a later period through the connection, through the exchanges, the learning that came from the East. Means came from India, if you want to call it like that, because actually there was a much greater India than the present India. The Akhanda Bharat was going from Iran to Singapore. So talking about India is like, well, lots of place, lots of, very big region. In fact, one of the favorite expressions in the medieval and Renaissance scholarship was a Latin sentence that is ex oriente lux. Which means the light comes from the east, from the Orient. Orient means rising sun. So they knew very well before the colonial era, the colonial age, real scholars knew very well that the deepest theological knowledge, philosophical theological knowledge, was coming from India. And was coming from India. Some came through the Buddhist monks sent around by Ashoka, and some came from people who actually visited India in ancient times. And contrarily to what many people think, in ancient times, there were a lot of people traveling around, and there were no passports, no visas, no residence permits or whatever. Anyone could just jump on a ship and by boat could come to India easily. If not by boat, they could come through land before the Islamic age. Both through boat and through land, there was a famous Silk Road. All the ancient world around the Mediterranean was purchasing, especially not only silk but spices as well from India, and lots of other stuff. They were purchasing opium and cannabis as well, together with some other medicinal plants. So there was a lot of people going up and down. A lot of people came to India. For example, there is a famous Heliodorus column, I think in Madhya Pradesh, I'm not sure. We can find out quite easily. So this Heliodorus column was installed by one Greek guy called Heliodorus, who converted to Hinduism a few centuries before the current age, means before Christ, and took the name of Vasudeva. So the column is a celebration of this conversion. And if you go and see my book, Why I Became a Hindu, there are lots of other similar stories. And this means that the concept of yoga at that time became known through Greece as gymnosophia, which means it's the exercise of knowledge. The yogis were called gymnosophists, which is a Greek definition. and were already going around everywhere even before the Buddhist monks. So the yoga was there, and it went into a lot of cultures, but the meaning of yoga was always about connecting the self with the universe, the connection between the Atman and the Brahman. So when we speak of Arjuna Vishada Yoga, we mean that Arjuna asking, wondering, meditating on the armies that are going to start fighting, is the beginning, the first step in understanding about the world, life, reality. And in fact, this is the beginning of Krishna's teachings. So, the Arjuna Vishada Yoga is the beginning of the journey, and the second chapter is called Sankhya Yoga, which literally means the yoga of analysis and enumeration. So it starts with the analysis. The first point of analysis that Krishna is offering is the distinction between the kshetra and the kshetragya. The kshetragya is the Atman, and the kshetra is the body, the world, the object. So the kshetragya is Atman, is spiritual, and the kshetra is material. If we don't understand this difference, we cannot understand anything else. So the Sankhya Yoga means we have to analyze to make a distinction. Then later Krishna will show that this distinction is a matter of perception, which is functional to our development. But in the end, we come to the understanding and the realization that matter is just a manifestation of spirit. It's a bit like mathematics. When a child goes to primary school, the teacher says that you cannot subtract a bigger number from a smaller number. Which is true, in a sense, because to start making the basic mathematical operation like addition, subtraction, and everything, you have to start working with positive numbers. Simple positive numbers that you can count on your fingers. So, this is what the teachers tell you. So, Krishna is saying, okay, you are not the body. You are the soul. You don't die when the body dies. Nobody dies. No one. Nobody. Everybody dies, but no one dies. No Atma dies. So the people who are here today on the Kurukshetra field, and they're going to engage in battle and kill each other, they're not going to die. Only the body is going to die. Of course, this can be misinterpreted by foolish people who say that the Gita is incitement to hatred and violence, but they don't understand the point. Unfortunately, we have to say that even people who pass for spiritual authorities and otherwise have been doing a very good job to support Hinduism, etc., they also make this big mistake. But anyway, we'll go on and we'll see that while we go on in studying the Gita, especially in the next, in the later chapters, like for example, the chapter 13, the yoga of understanding nature as distinct from the personal principle, it's the same. like chapter 2. The nature is the kshetra and the personal principle is the kshetragya. But the chapter explains that in fact they are not separated. They're never separated. They are not independent. They don't have an independent existence. So at this point, we can say that in chapter 13, it's like going on into the study of mathematics, and at that point, the teacher starts to say that it is in fact possible to subtract a bigger number from a smaller number, and this is called algebra. And you are going to use negative numbers. When you use positive numbers, you have to subtract, let's say, 3 from 4, means a smaller number from a bigger number. So 4 minus 3 is 1. In algebra, you're working with negative values, negative numbers, so you can subtract 4 from 3. So 3 minus 4 becomes minus 1. It's not that you cannot do it, but you have to get a better, deeper, and wider understanding of reality in order to understand algebra. You cannot just go to a nursery school child and talk about algebra, because he is going to be very confused. So in the same way, we have Bhagavad Gita that is going to develop along all these 18 chapters. So after Sankhya Yoga, which is clarifying what is the distinction, what is the kshetra and the kshetragya, what is the spiritual and what is the material, if we realize this, if we really understand this, we are never going to make the mistake of identifying ourselves as material bodies and material minds. This is the first step in spiritual realization, because to realize that you are a spirit soul, you have to stop believing that you are a body, because otherwise you're not going anywhere. So all the people who claim they're teaching Bhagavad Gita, they're teaching Vedic knowledge, they're teaching liberation, they're teaching whatever, Hinduism, religion, Hindu religion, Dharma, Vidya, whatever, if they continue to make material body identifications, you can immediately see that these people are fake, they're frauds. So, if you have a look around, you see that the situation is a disaster. If you make identifications about the material physical body, you become attached to the ahankar and mamatva. Ahankar means I am doing. I am this, I am that, therefore I do this and I do that. Like I am a woman, so I do my duty as a woman and I just make children and cook and be quiet. Or I am a man, so I have to, enjoy and command the family, this and that. I am Indian, so and some people think I'm a man, I'm a woman, I'm Indian, I'm American, I'm Italian, I am Russian, I am old, I'm young, I'm rich, I'm poor, I'm famous, I'm not famous. All these things are related to the body only, body and mind. So this is material identification ahankara and mamato. Krishna clearly says in Gita, ahankara vimudhatma kartaham iti manyate. Vimudhatma means stupid, confused. Someone who is confused, stupid, and ignorant. He thinks, because he's confused by the ahankara, he thinks, I am doing this, I am doing that. I am a prime minister, I am the president, I am whatever, Just fill in the blanks. It's all material, material identifications. Now, the overcoming of the material identification of ahankara mamata is the first step that is described in the second chapter as the goal, and then Krishna elaborates in the next chapters about how to actually get there in a permanent way. So the chapter 3 is the karma yoga of action. There is another big misconception, and all these misconceptions are basically coming from a faulty cultural superimposition of Abrahamic concepts over Hinduism that are really confusing people. And one of these ideas is that a person who is spiritually minded, a religious person, must abstain from action. Basically, the idea is still rooted in the material bodily identification, but in a negative sense. So, the idea, the positive sense, the active sense is, because I am the body, I am going to do these actions, I am doing these actions, kartaham, I'm doing all this to get a benefit for myself. I work so I get money, I marry so I get family enjoyment, and so on. Now, if someone believes that, but believes that in order to be spiritual he has to give up these things as a sannyasi, a sadhu, a sannyasi, or whatever, then they think that they're still the body and they are giving up these things. So, because they're giving up these things, they don't need to work anymore. And this is definitely not what the Bhagavad Gita is teaching. Bhagavad Gita is teaching that the real sannyasi is not someone who does not work, does not perform his duties. A real sannyasi is someone who becomes detached from the result of the action, of the work. A real sannyasi is someone who actually works in whatever capacity according to guna and karma, but without being attached to the result. Not for, he doesn't want to have selfish benefit. And this is summarized by Krishna when he says, karmanye evadikaraste ma phalesu kadachana. Means you have the adhikar, the right, you have the duty to perform the actions, to work, but you don't have any right to the result of your work, because each one of us is working as a service to the universal body. And this is chapter 3, the yoga of action. Now, the example is given that the hand or the various parts of the body are working, like the hand is working, picking the food, cooking, preparing, and putting the food in the plate and taking the food to the mouth. But the hand is not interested in tasting the food, in getting the nutrition of the food. Whatever work the hand does is to take the food to the mouth. The mouth, in the same way, the mouth, specifically the mouth, does its job by chewing the food. But it doesn't keep the food. It channels it down to the stomach. So the stomach, the belly, also is not just keeping the food there. It's working on the food by extracting the nutrition principles and then sending these nutritious principles all over the body. And this nutrition goes everywhere, goes to the hand, goes to the head, goes to the feet, the legs, through the circulation of blood. So the blood goes everywhere and carries the nutrition. So the Purusha Sukta is a very famous hymn in the Rig Veda and repeated also in many other passages, many other texts. And very clearly shows human society as an incarnation of Vishnu. And the head of the Purusha is represented by the Brahmanas. The arms are represented by the Kshatriyas. The belly is represented by the Vaishyas, and the legs and the feet are represented by the Shudras. There is no Dalits, outcasts in the body. There are only 4 Varnas. Varnas have nothing to do with caste, with the caste system. We are interested in the Varnas, not in the caste system. Caste system is based on birth, jati, birth prejudice, which is the root of all ignorance as identification with the material body. So, the body is the same. The difference of the guna and karma doesn't depend on birth. It depends on the tendencies, the interests, the quality that each person will develop, and that can also change. The body, once you take birth, you have that body. Yeah. You can try to make it better, make it worse, but it's not going to change until you leave that body and you take a new body with the next birth. But guna and karma can change. In fact, we need to make a conscious effort to improve our guna and karma. So, the swadharma in the varnashrama system is not determined by your birth. In fact, even Atri Rishi is famous for having said, Janmana Jayate Shudra. One by birth can only be a Shudra. So all these people who think they're Brahmanas by birth, okay, that goes back to the category of fraud, fake frauds, because they identify with the gross material body that has nothing to do with the qualifications of a Brahmana. In fact, are exactly the opposite. So, through the yoga of action, we cultivate the guna and karma in working selflessly for the benefit of the entire body of the Purusha, which is the entire social body of human society, and not only human society, because human beings, civilized human beings, are supposed to take care of all the other beings. So the civilized human beings, especially those who have the proper guna and karma are expected to perform yagyas, to perform sacred activities that enable them, through which a human being, civilized and evolved human being, contributes to the good management of the universe. This is the purpose of the Vedic yagyas, the Vedic rituals. And this is why Krishna in this chapter explains that at the beginning of creation, the Prajapati, created the bodies of all the beings and the devas, humans, and everyone, and told the humans, you offer yagyas, you offer worship to the devas, and the devas will reciprocate by giving you whatever you need to contribute to the benefit of the universal community. And in return, you also associate with the devas, you meditate on the devas, you develop a relationship with the devas, so you learn from the devas how to do your part, how to contribute your part through performance of your personal duty, your swadharma, to the proper management of the universe. Okay, so this is chapter 3. Then this is the basics. We are still very much on the material level here. This is the manual for proper life on this planet. Many people wonder why, if there is a omnipotent God, omnipotent means all-powerful, omniscient means he knows everything, and omnipresent means present everywhere, and especially if God is good, why there is so much suffering in the world? Why God has created the world so that people will suffer? Now, the answer is very clearly and easily given in the Shastra specifically, and in the Bhagavad Gita specifically. The point is that this world is not so bad. This world could be excellent. Life in this world could be very nice, of course, within reason, if we follow the system. If we follow the system, if we follow the laws of the universe, and the first law of the universe is karma, and it's a physical law. Every action has a reaction. Every effect has a cause. Every cause will create an effect. This is very simple physics. So, it's very, very simple, very clear. So if everybody had very clear ideas about what karma means, what is the law of karma, what is reincarnation, what is the universal community, what is the Atman as part of the Brahman, we would be very happy living in this world, because Krishna many times repeats in Bhagavad Gita that we should work for the benefit of all beings. Many times. And this is the fundamental point of the Vedic knowledge. We are part of the universe. You are part of the body that is the universe, the Virat Rupa that Krishna will show to Arjuna in Bhagavad Gita. So if we are really aware, conscious of being a part of the universal body, the hand is not going to harm the foot of the body. Why should the hand harm the foot of the same body? That's stupid. Why should the foot try to, carry the body, into a dangerous or destructive situation? Why should the legs desire to destroy the body or harm the body? Jump into the fire. Why should it? Jump from the roof. Why? There's no point. It's stupid. So why should the head do things that create problems to the entire body? We call that madness because it's crazy. It's stupid. So if we actually follow the manual that is offered to us in the first 3 chapters of Gita, we can live happily in this world. Jijivishek chatak samaha. Like the Sri Upanishad said, one could desire to live 100 years. Because there is no bad karma. It's all good karma that you consume. The good karma, you work properly, and with the credit, the karmic credit you earn, you enjoy life in a reasonable manner. Of course, it must be up to a point, because the purpose of the material world is not to live happily, but to evolve so that we can achieve liberation. So, the 4 Purusharthas, and in this case, Purusha is both the individual human being and the material world, as a Virat Purusha of the Purusha Sukta. The 4 purposes of the entire human society, of the entire universe, are Dharma, Artha, Kama, Moksha. So Dharma is the first step, so that we learn how to work in the universe, in the human society, in our Swadharma. Dharma is very important. Then when we learn Dharma properly and we work, we apply this knowledge, we automatically obtain Artha, valuable things. What is valuable doesn't mean that we have to fill up our coffers and bank account with money that we are not going to use. Artha means a valuable thing, such a nice house, good food, good air, good water, happy life, good relationships. Artha is possible. Then, when we have valuable things, we have what we need for proper living in this world, for a good quality of life, then we can pursue karma, which is totally legitimate. Karma is okay. It's okay for animals, it's okay for plants, it's okay for human beings. But karma must be pursued in accordance to Artha and Dharma, because if karma is pursued without Artha and Kama and Dharma, it becomes a mess. Krishna in Gita says, Kamosmi Bharatarshava, Dharma Viruddha Bhuteshu. I am the Kama that is not against the principles of Dharma. So if the principles of Dharma are properly understood and applied, and the principles of Artha are also understood and applied, then we can understand and apply the principles of Kama, ideally in Sattva Guna, which is how we actually enjoy life, but with moderation, with self-control. And after getting your normal, healthy, legitimate, sattvic enjoyment, at some point the body starts to get older and the enjoyment is not so interesting anymore, because the senses become dull, and you get tired and you start thinking, okay, what am I doing here? So here, every person in the Varna Shrama Dharma should at some point in life, ideally earlier, but at some point in life, they have to start thinking about moksha, or liberation from material conditionings, which is the final application, the complete application of the process that we started in chapter 2 with the differentiation between the kshetra and the kshetriya. Now, during the life, the brahmacharya grihastha life, we have kept the ahankara and mamatva not as our identity, our identification, but as instruments, circumstantial instruments that are needed to do our work in society. Then, with the vanaprastha, panchasordhvam manamrajet, after the 50th birthday, the children are grown up, they are starting to get their own children. So the people, the grandparents can now retire because, the family traditions are nicely in the hands of the grown-up children, so generally the vanaprasthas leave the house and go to the forest. By going to the forest doesn't mean that they have to, live on the trees, but they just give up the professional duties and the social duties, and they start making austerity, tapasya, specifically for the purpose of becoming detached from the material body, so that there is a better transition, an easier transition at the time of death. Now, traveling in pilgrimage places is a form of tapasya. Living in a simple, modest accommodation in a quiet place, like a forest of old, now no more forests are there, was also a form of tapasya, because you don't get luxury stuff, you don't get a lot of sense gratification, you just eat very simply. You can continue to do some forms of yagya, but basically you eat less and you eat simpler food. Maybe you eat just some fruits and leaves and roots that don't require a lot of work for preparation. And then we move to the sannyasa ashram. We become sannyasis. Then this is facilitated by the jnana yoga, which is the yoga of knowledge. The sannyasa yoga, which is the yoga of renunciation, and the dhyana yoga, which is the yoga of meditation. So this retired life that we can choose at any point in our life. Krishna says very clearly in the chapter Sannyasa Yoga that the real sannyasi is not a person who refrains from action, doesn't light the fire, doesn't do any rituals, doesn't do any work, but is someone who is performing whatever duties, but without being attached to the fruits of the activity. So that was already expected from a grihastha, but even more so in the vanaprastha stage, because the grihastha could enjoy a little more. Okay, let's give some space for enjoyment for the kama, but then in the vanaprastha stage, the kama has to go down, because you have to prepare for the passage to becoming detached from the body. And getting all these actually helping in detaching oneself from the body. So the yoga of knowledge, the yoga of renunciation, and yoga of meditation. Then we have chapter 7, chapter 8, and chapter 9 are actually the next step. The yoga of applied knowledge, the yoga of liberating spiritual existence, and the yoga of the supreme secret. Vijnana yoga, Taraka Brahma yoga, Rajaguhya yoga. So we learn to meditate on applied knowledge, which is a liberating spiritual existence. And this is a supreme secret. It's secret. Why it's secret? Because everybody is engaged in material activities, and it's difficult to find someone who has a very constant and clear awareness of the spiritual existence. Is that now everything is clear? We can go on for another some other minutes. Then we have chapter 10 and 11 is the Vibhuti Yoga, Vishvarupa Darshana Yoga, which is the yoga of powers and the yoga of contemplation of the universal form, which are practically one chapter only, because the yoga of powers also, Arjuna is asking Krishna how we should meditate on God, and Krishna is showing Arjuna and us as well that we should meditate on God in the various by contemplating the various manifestations of God, including this material universe. Then we have the next chapters, that is yoga of devotion, the bhakti yoga, which is a very interesting topic that we may discuss in the next meeting. Then the Prakriti Purusha Viveka Yoga, as we said before, the yoga of understanding nature as distinct from the personal principle, but we understand that nature is not just the material nature, is also the spiritual nature. So we have the realization of Maya as Mahamaya and Yogamaya, which is a very important step, especially in Bhakti Yoga. Then we have chapter 14, which is the yoga differentiating between the gunas, which is also very important. Even after we start engaging in Bhakti Yoga, we still have to remember what is the effect, the action of the gunas. Because if we don't watch the gunas, we will be in problem because the mind, the material body are made of gunas. Guna guneshu vartanta. We need to engage the gunas in the gunas. As long as we have a material body, no one can escape the action of the gunas. Then we get the chapter 15, the Purushottama Yoga, the Daiva Sura Sampad Vibhaga Yoga, which is the yoga of differentiating between the characteristics of the divine and the demoniac personalities or qualities. And the other connected chapter, which is Shraddhatraya Vibhaga Yoga, which is connected to the gunas and the difference between the divine and the demoniac tendencies, the devas and the asuras. So sometimes people think they have achieved spiritual realization through austerity, but they actually have only achieved some kind of power, like asuras can do as well. We have so many examples of asuras who achieve great powers through tapasya and meditation, but that's not a divine characteristic. In this chapter, we find that the asuras also perform religious activities. But the difference between the devas and the asuras is the reason why, the motivation why they engage in all these actions. And then we have the last chapter, which is Moksha Yoga, the Yoga of Liberation. That is the conclusion of the Gita, just like the chapter 1 was the introduction, and the chapter 2 was the first uh, batch of teachings, the first steps on the road. So now, if you don't have questions, I think we can leave the rest to the next meeting. Yes,
Yeah, I just have one question.
yeah,
So, like I think in earlier discussions, we've discussed that this concept of sannyasa
yes,
before Shankaracharya was
yes,
to go into forest and
yeah.
like meditate and all. So, isn't it contrary to the karma yoga that what you've explained that
No, of course not.
the
Of course
sannyas
not.
doesn't mean that you go to forest and you just
No, no,
you
because
have to do your
in the
duties
same
and all.
chapter, if you remember, Krishna
Mm-hmm.
is explaining that there are different types of yajnas. You know, there is a list. He says some people perform yajnas by offering the prana into the apana, and there is so many ways to perform
Mm-hmm.
yajna, and each particular
Mm-hmm.
form is a specific approach based on guna and karma, based on varna and ashram. Every person, every individual has a particular needs, a particular personalized program. And this is why the relationship with the guru is so important. Because regarding, especially regarding the mantras of the Vedas, the ritualistic sacrifice, the organization of the sadhana, all these things are, they require the direct guidance of a guru, where a guru is someone who has realized these things personally and has a personal, direct personal relationship with the sisha, with the student, with the disciple, and therefore can give a personalized guidance to each disciple. So again, just like the idea that the Brahmana is someone who was born in a particular family is a fraud. So the idea that the guru is someone who doesn't have any responsibility to the disciple and doesn't need to be fully qualified for what he teaches, this is also a big fraud. So there are so many, as we were discussing before, in previous, uh, conversations, about all these babas, sadhus, gurus, like that. A guru superstar that doesn't even know his disciples is not a guru. It's just someone, the same kind of benefit we can get from this type of guru, we can get from any book. What's the benefit? The guru needs to have a personal, direct relationship with the disciple. If he doesn't, then he's not a guru. It can be a general teacher, it can be a lecturer, it can be a sadhu, can be even he can be a pure devotee in the sense that maybe he doesn't have any personal selfish motivation, maybe he's sincere, but that's not a guru. That's not the job description of the guru. So we look around and it's not easy to find a guru. Therefore, my suggestion is to, uh, you know, turn to the Param Guru, the Vishwa Guru, of whom all the actual gurus are just manifestations. We need to turn to the Guru Tattva, that is the Paramatma in the heart. So this is my recommendation. So yeah, the idea is that
So when we say that like different types of yagyas are
yeah,
given in this Karma Yoga chapter,
Yes.
So for like those sannyasis who dwell in forest, like those three
Yeah.
Shankaracharya era sannyasis.
Before. Yeah.
So they are also engaged in karma, but they they are doing it through their uh, meditation,
Yes.
we can say, right?
Yes.
Through
Exactly. Exactly. This
pran and
is why
apan,
we
vayu,
have
whatever.
exactly.
That way they are doing their karma.
Exactly. This is why we have the Sanhitas and Brahmanas are specifically for the Grihastas who the brahmacharis and grihastas who have to learn how to perform the Vedic homa and soma and contribute directly to the society in that particular way, in that particular varna. Then the vanaprastha, we have the aranyakas. The aranyakas, and gradually also we come to the Upanishads. The Upanishads and the Vedanta Sutra are specifically for sannyasis because there is the antaryagya, the internal yagya. Everything is done internally. There is no more need for the external yagya. Everything is done internally, on the mental and spiritual level. So at the time of death, there is no trauma. There is no difference. We are already detached from the body. So we can keep our consciousness stable. Dhiras tatra namuhyati. The dhiras means someone who has a stable consciousness and is not confused. This is done ideally in the stage of sannyas. This is the purpose of the stage of sannyas. Of course, people today cannot do, in Kali Yuga especially, they cannot do what the sannyasis are supposed to do according to the traditional system. So in the revolution, the reform created by Adi Shankar. Well, Adi Shankar is practically the founder of Hinduism as we know it today, but he didn't start a completely new religion. He just adapted the Vedic knowledge, the Vedic system, to the Kali Yuga in a more stable manner. So Adi Shankar created this idea of the matas that are organizations where sannyasis and brahmacharis, people who are totally dedicated to spiritual life only, they can support each other and they can help the society, not just staying at the margins of society but engaging in society full time. Adi Shankar also gave great importance to temples and deity worship, the Panchopasana, the Panchadevata, and Bhakti, which is not particularly visible in the Vedic Yagya system. But it was there already in the form of yoga and tantra, but it got more importance thanks to the work by Adi Shankar. So this is the great revolution that Adi Shankar effected, and we can use it. Maybe we are also now today on the road for still another revolution, the next revolution, and we can talk about that next time. So keep your questions. Make a list of the
Okay,
questions.
so what is this next revolution? Maybe can you give
Exactly.
some hint?
Yes, we'll tell about it in the next meeting. To the next episode. You'll find out in the next episode. It's a good
It's a
cliffhanger.
cliffhanger.
Yeah, exactly, like a TV serial. You'll know, we'll find out in the next episode. Ah. So anyway, I am
Okay.
encouraging you to write down all the questions, all the issues and everything.
Mm-hmm.
You send them to me by WhatsApp during the week, and if
Okay.
we can continue next time, same day, same time, I'll be happy. So thank you for your kind participation. I stop the recording now.